that kind of like lit a fire under me to like, okay, I got to change my work ethic around.
Today we have a really special guest, Jake. We grew up together pretty much for the most part.
Hmm.
We both grew up on Kauai, and Jake, just tell us a little bit about yourself and kind of, I just maybe what you do, things you like to do, maybe your family life, all that stuff.
All right. Well, I am a licensed boat captain here on Kauai, taking people to the Nepali coast. Some of my more interesting, or some of the things that I really like doing is surfing,
Hmm.
just being outdoors in general. I think that's just kind of one of the environments that was kind of curated to our lifestyle as a kids.
Right.
It's just that everything was go outside, do something. So
Right.
whether it be hiking, going to the beach, doing something. So really love being outdoors. Love playing sports, soccer, football, uh, golf, tennis even. Um, Married, expecting our first child,
Yeah.
and yeah, we're just super excited. Still trying to make everything work here, and financially is
Yeah.
kind of a fun one.
Yeah.
Want to
So,
buy a house, but I don't know if that's in the cards right now.
and you guys, you never really thought about planning to live elsewhere to like buy something, or was that a thought?
Um, so as of now, it's not a thought, but we have
Hmm.
had that conversation many times where it's
Hmm.
if it ever got to the point where we would end up losing money and not being able to save money,
Hmm.
and then it's just not a financial, we don't want to put ourselves in a financial burden.
Right, 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 right.
So as long as we can afford where we're living and our lifestyle and still save money, we plan on staying.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
We do eventually want to try and buy a house,
Hmm.
whether that's here on Kauai, which
Hmm.
would be the most ideal,
Hmm.
um, but whether that's here on Kauai or elsewhere,
Who
only
knows?
God knows that.
Yeah, yeah. Who knows?
Yeah.
So Jake and I we pretty much grew up together. You knew my sister first because you guys were classmates.
Hmm.
And then slowly through, I guess, I don't even know how did we even like really meet?
Jeremy.
What was it, Jeremy?
Jeremy was the one that really introduced us because
Okay,
I
yeah,
was
yeah.
hanging out with Jeremy,
Mm-hmm.
and then he knew you guys from when you guys lived at the post office.
Right.
And then
Forgot
when
about
you
that.
guys moved into the valley,
Mm-hmm.
I was hanging out with him, and he was like, "Oh, I'm gonna go hang out with our other friends." And
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
yeah, that
And
was kind
then
of how that.
the rest was history.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then after that we kind of pretty much grew up together. We started, or Jake was one of the people who brought started bringing me to church actually. And that was my first experience in the Christian community. And that's I think I remember you would always go to Kumon, and
Oh gosh,
you'd always go there,
forgot
and then
about
you
that.
asked me, I swear you probably asked me 3 or 4 times before I actually went, but you would always ask me like, "Oh, I'm going to Kumon. Um, you want to go to church with me after?" I don't know if you remember that at all. You're probably like, "No."
I barely remember Kumon. I remember eventually you coming to church with me. I just don't
Hmm.
remember how many times I asked you.
Yeah, I mean, so that that's I think that's it's funny because that's a part of my testimony is like I remember you specifically asking me about like, oh hey, I'm gonna go to tutoring basically, and then I'm going to go to church right after because I'm pretty sure it was on a Friday.
Yeah,
Yep.
it was because, and it was easy for Pastor Dave to pick me up because he was at
Was he picking
LLA
you up at
school.
that time?
I didn't have a car. Yeah,
I don't even remember. That's crazy.
skating. I would skate from our house, my house,
Uh huh.
to the bus stop,
Mm-hmm.
and then get dropped off in LA, and then go up to LA school,
Yeah,
and then he would meet me somewhere down by McDonald's.
that's crazy. That's so funny.
Yeah.
I don't know why that's funny. It's just
So did you come with me to Kumon?
I I I swear I must have come with you for sure that time I went to church with you. But before that, I'm not sure. Mhm. Yeah, because I remember
Because
you
that
would
was
always
also right.
go.
Because that was right around the time that we were skating a lot too. So
Yes, I
I think you just probably skated the school.
I definitely remember skateboarding LA school. Yes.
I remember filming you at skate LA school, but we weren't there for Kumon.
Yeah. The good old skate days.
Yeah,
Yeah, wow. So that was a while ago. Who knows how long
yeah,
ago? That
that
was
was.
when I was 12 and you
Oof.
were what? You were a freshman? No, that's not even freshman. Yeah, you were a freshman.
No,
You
I
must have
was.
been or like 8th grade. You had to be. 8th grade or
Mm,
freshman or maybe a sophomore actually.
maybe
1,
a
2, 3.
sophomore. I don't know.
I
I
don't
was
remember.
I was probably like 13 or 14.
Yeah, yeah. That's funny. Okay, anyway.
No, I don't know because I
Yeah, no.
wasn't driving yet.
Right, 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 right. You when did you start driving the Blazer? I'm gonna just keep on
Oh, that.
bringing back these like, because I know we grew up together, so
Uh,
obviously, dang,
well, I
that's
got
funny.
my license, and that was my junior year. Towards the end
Mhm,
of my junior year,
mhm.
maybe even like beginning of my senior year.
Yeah, yeah. Okay.
And I remember, like, I still tell this story every once in a while, but um, I would always steal my mom's car to
Okay.
go drive
The
to the
Subaru?
beach. The Subaru, because it was automatic. I didn't know how to drive standard at the time.
Yeah, that's funny.
And
Uh-huh.
my mom got really mad at that. And she was like,
Mhm.
no, I'm teaching you how to drive standard right now.
Okay.
And then, so literally 5 minutes of learning how to drive standard. And my mom's like, okay, you're good.
It's like, "All right, go drive this
And
Blazer
then
somewhere."
I remember this because, like, that same day, I think I called everyone up and I was like, let's go to the beach. Yeah, let's go.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah.
And we're coming back from the beach, and I think we were going to like the Thrifty Mart in Keikaha.
Mhm, mhm.
And I went to turn left and I stalled on the oncoming traffic lane, and there's cars coming. I'm like,
Just freaking out. Yeah, yeah,
so
yeah.
I remember that was my first time like really driving standard. And then, of course, I got a little better at it
After a while, yeah.
and kind of taught you a little bit,
Yeah, I
taught your
mean, you
sister a little
you
bit.
yeah, Brittany doesn't know how to drive standard.
I tried.
I remember a few times. There was, I don't know, probably several times where we would go to the beach or I think you would ask me like, I don't know if you would ask me or if I asked you, but like we would get to Russian Fort and
Yeah,
then be like, "Oh, you want to drive home?" Because it was easy. You just coast down, pretty much coast down into the valley.
yeah,
Um, I was like, okay, and then so that was the first, I guess, like real introduction into like driving stick and on the islands because I wasn't taught by anybody else except you. And then um, it was funny when I came to Oregon, one of my first cars here was stick, and it was, I mean, I was bad at it. I think I would stall out all the time. I get super frustrated, but eventually I learned, and then I bought another car. I bought a '91 Accord that was stick, and I drove that to work all the time. And then started to like, oh shoot, I love stick. It's standard is the way to go. Not,
yeah,
and I felt so dumb, like, oh, okay, I'm just gonna jump it. I would jump into my friend's car, and his car was automatic, and I just felt like my hand would go down to like try and shift gears, and I'm like, oh, there's no clutch. And it's just a weird feeling. But anywho, let's back to what we're actually talking about. So you got your captain's license, and how long have you done that for?
I've been on the boats now for going on almost 11 and a half years.
11 years? Is it actually that long?
Yeah, June of 2012.
Holy crap! Actually, no way.
Um,
Oh yeah,
yeah,
you were. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Because I remember you needed. Well, you were on the boat, and you needed a certain amount of hours in order to get your
uh-huh.
license or something like that.
Because I was working there when I tried to get you and Connor to work with us.
That's right.
You did
Right.
a ride along,
I did
and
ride along, and then
you
that
did
didn't
not
go
feel the
super. Yeah,
greatest.
that didn't go that great. That was yeah, that was, and that I definitely my head wasn't in the right space too. I think it was just like
Mm,
okay, yeah, but yeah, I remember that. And I don't remember when Kana started, but okay, you were on the boats for 11-ish years.
yeah, I mean
Um,
there was a little like little break in between,
mhm.
about a 6 month break because I moved to Oahu for a little bit.
Oh yeah, that's right. Yep, yep.
But other than that, it's been boats. But got my license in October of 2016.
Hmm.
So next month makes 7 years of having my captain's license.
Yeah, wow.
Um, and yeah, just really, really catering to the lifestyle that we kind of grew up with, being out in the ocean, being out in the water. It's just, I couldn't ask for a better profession to
Hmm.
be in
Yeah, yeah.
because I'm always outside, I'm always in the sun,
Right.
on the ocean.
Hmm.
And right now I'm working with Jacob,
Hmm.
but just got Nolan a job.
Okay, is he not working at the other place anymore?
No, he quit a while ago,
Got it.
and he started with us about a month, maybe 2 months ago.
Okay, cool.
So he's super psyched on that.
Hmm.
So it's like I get to work with some of my friends that were my childhood friends.
Yeah, which is crazy actually.
Yeah, so
Okay.
that's been really really cool.
Hmm.
Jacob, I mean, of course, is getting ready to move, but
Hmm. Hmm. Yep.
so that's kind of he's got one more week of work with me, and then
And then
he's
off he goes.
done.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, no. So being so I mean pretty much living the way you're living is like you're living like you said, the way we grew up. Always outside, always in the water. You know, the ocean is right there and it's pretty much your workspace. Do you feel like it was hard for you to kind of get into that space? As I guess what I mean is like, did you ever feel not left out, but did you ever feel like you were in the wrong place as occupation wise? Because I remember in high school, I mean, I don't remember you ever talking about becoming a captain or doing anything like that. You were doing stuff with architecture and then trying to figure out stuff on in that end. But I guess yeah, yeah. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So like you just kind of touched on growing up, like my mindset through my mom was
Mm-hmm.
you go to school,
Mm-hmm.
go to college, you get a degree in something, you become successful in life. That was
Mm-hmm.
kind of what I was raised. So
Yeah.
I found stuff that I was interested in, architecture and drafting and all that stuff was definitely something I was very interested in when I was a kid.
Mm-hmm.
And throughout high school, I even took 3 years of drafting classes and was working towards that as my um, long-term goal, I per se.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Um, so yeah, the boating instinct really didn't have any. Um, Even when I started with the boats, it was initially a summer job.
Yeah.
It wasn't set to be a profession or anything like that.
Right.
But so what ended up happening was when I graduated high school, I was like, okay, I'm going to go to KCC, get my
Mm-hmm.
liberal arts done, then I'm going to transfer to a university, and this is my whole plan.
Mm-hmm.
The
Mm-hmm.
problem with Kauai Community College was we live on such a small island. back when you're a kid, I mean, I look back at it now and I wish I could go back to high school. But back when you're a kid,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
you're in high school and you want to get out of high school.
Right. Right. Yeah.
So that was like my main focus. Like, I want to get out of high school. I want
Mm-hmm.
to go.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I can't wait to be done. And so I graduated high school, applied for KCC, got into KCC, started going to classes, knew 90% of the people in the class.
Mm.
And it was like, oh, I graduated high school to go to high school.
Yeah.
That was
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
feel
Yeah.
I
Yeah. Yeah.
had.
Right.
And it just really just kind of like turned me off to the whole idea of like going to college. Like, if this is what college is like, I don't want to be it.
Yeah.
So like there was just no motivation. So I did a semester and a half at KCC
Okay.
before I was like, you know what, I'd rather not be a part of this. Like, this is just not. And there was no motivation.
Mm.
Even in my math classes, like math has always been a really easy thing for me.
Okay. Yeah.
I was getting C's because I didn't want to do the homework. That was the main reason why I got a C. I do remember almost kind of specifically, it was kind of funny. So I didn't go to class,
Mm-hmm.
didn't do my homework,
Mm-hmm.
but I knew the days that I had tests.
Yeah.
So I'd go in and I'd ace the test and I'd
Yeah.
walk out. And the teacher would look at me like, you're cheating.
Like, who is it? Yeah. Oh, yeah. Okay.
You're cheating. And I'm
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
how am I cheating? I'm the first one done.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's
That's fair.
like,
That's fair.
it's like, so I'd turn it in and I'd walk out.
Mm-hmm.
And so I got C's because I just didn't do any other thing.
I see. I see.
Ended up dropping out and was like, okay. My mom was not too happy with that one, but
Mm-hmm.
she was like, well, if you're not going to go to school, get a job.
Mm.
At the time, I was still working at Subway.
Okay. Yeah. Subway. Yep.
Yep,
Mm-hmm.
my first job.
All nostalgic. Yep.
Yeah, I was hooking up everybody with
I know. It's just extra bacon
sandwiches.
and
Yeah, not charging anybody for it, giving you cookies and all that.
little cookies.
Oh, I
That's so
remember
good.
that was like my best favorite part about it. It's like at the end of the day, they were like, "Oh, take the cookies home." Sure,
All right.
of
Whatever.
course.
Say no more.
So, because I always had the closing shift too.
Okay.
So I
Yeah.
even took bread home sometimes. Like, I don't know why, but I took bread home.
Because you like bread. I don't know. Because why not?
Oh, I guess. But so I was working at Subway at the time,
Uh huh.
and that's when the golf course in Poipu was being built.
Mm.
And when I was a senior in high school, I had my senior project was to design a 9-hole golf course, like
Yep.
an architectural style. I had connections. My community mentor was one of the guys working there.
Okay. Yeah.
So my mom found out that they were hiring. So I
Mm-hmm.
kind of like contacted him and
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I eventually got hired there as part of their opening team for their golf course and
Yeah.
the club at Kukuyula, and really enjoyed that, but kind of just didn't have a great work ethic at the time.
Mm.
So like I had a couple of lates like real early on. And then what ended up happening with that was after like a couple months of having a few
Uh huh.
late, like getting to work late,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I got sat down by the HR
Okay. Yeah.
and they basically gave me an ultimatum. They're like, so we're trying to cultivate this like work ethic where you can't be late, like,
Mm-hmm.
and like just typical stuff.
Right. Right.
And I was 20 at the time, 19,
Okay.
20. I was still really young. So it's like not the most motivated person.
Trying
And
to
I was
figure
like,
it out.
yeah, and I was still wanted to surf and all that. And
Yeah.
so they gave me this ultimatum. They're like, either you can quit now
Mm.
or you can work an entire year. And if you have one late, we'll fire you. But if
Mm.
you make it the entire year without being late, we'll wipe your slate clean.
Okay.
So they're
Yep.
like, go home, think about it for the day.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay. So I went home and thought about it. I was like, well, the obvious answer is to try and work for the whole
Right.
year
Mm.
and make it. So that kind of like lit a fire under me to like, okay, I got to change my work ethic around.
Mm-hmm.
So instead of like being there right at the time I was supposed to be there, I started being there 15 minutes early.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like just waking up earlier, getting ready, going,
Mm-hmm.
and just fully 180, like had like super fire lit under me, and I was like,
Mm-hmm.
I'm not gonna be late. I'm gonna prove these guys wrong.
Yeah.
Because they were saying like I've never seen anyone do it an entire year without being late once.
Mm. Mm-hmm.
And so there was a grace period at this place because you had an electronic check-in or
Okay.
like punch in.
Yep. Yep. Yep.
So you could punch in 7 minutes before and 7 minutes after and still be on time.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so one morning, woke up. It was probably May or April of 2012.
Mm-hmm.
Woke up and for some odd reason, I used to. So this is when I was staying in the upstairs
Mm-hmm.
unit
Yep.
of our old house, and I would put my keys next to my bedside
Okay.
on like I had a little like nightstand or whatever, and somehow the keys fell onto the bed and like in between the bed and the headboard,
Okay.
but they never made it to the ground. They caught like the
Oh, okay. Okay.
bed
So
frame.
it was just stuck there.
It was just stuck.
Mm-hmm.
So I wake up and I'm like, oh, I got plenty of time. Like, where are my keys? Start looking around. Couldn't find them. Like,
Mm.
looked under the bed, looked everywhere I would normally have them because I
Mm-hmm.
always put them on my nightstand.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, where the hell are my keys? Like,
Yeah.
okay,
Yeah.
I gotta leave. Like,
Right. Right. Right.
I
Right.
need my keys. So I'm like scrambling. I finally find them, and I'm like 5 minutes behind
Sure.
the time I normally left.
Right. Right. Right.
5, 10 minutes or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So I get in the truck and I'm like going. I'm like, okay, I can make it. It's not like I'm gonna be late. Like,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
so I'm getting there. I'm watching the time. I'm like, all right, it's getting close.
Mm-hmm.
So I pull up into like they have like a loading dock. Drive right into the loading dock basically.
Mm-hmm.
Get out to go punch myself in. And I was like, I
Yep.
can park my truck after.
Yep.
And as I'm punching in my code, I watch it go from whatever time I was supposed to start 6:07 to 6:08.
Yeah. Okay.
As I'm punching in the code,
Yeah. Uh-huh.
so I punch in and I was literally a minute late.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
But then it was also like I had to go to work. I'm a
Mm-hmm.
little bit behind time, so it's like I go and park my truck, and I'm like, okay, I'll
Mm-hmm.
just tell someone about it later.
Yeah.
So then I go to work and I forget all about it.
Mm.
Forget to tell the boss, forget to tell the manager,
Mm-hmm.
all this stuff. And just got to work, and then like 2 weeks go by, and I get called into the HR office. And they're like, so do you remember our ultimatum?
Mm.
Like, yeah, I do. Like, you were late the other day. And I was like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, yeah, I was a minute late. I watched it change. They're
Mm.
like, well, you're still late.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, well, I I apologize for not telling anyone. I just went to work. Like,
Right. 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 Right.
there was stuff that needed to be done, and
Mm-hmm.
I just went to work and got it done.
Mm-hmm.
And they were like, well, they were trying to be really nice about it, but basically they were firing me.
Mm-hmm.
And they're like, we'll let you claim unemployment. We're gonna call it a separation, not a firing.
Sure.
We're gonna. They were being really nice about it.
Mm-hmm.
Looking back at it now, but it's like basically I got let go of that job.
Mm.
And then I was like, okay, well that sucks. What do I do now? So I started doing unemployment,
Mm-hmm.
because I was like, oh, that sounds sick. Like not working and getting paid.
Yeah.
I can
Yep.
surf all day, whatever. Like that sounds
Mm-hmm.
awesome. But at the time, the way that unemployment worked was you had to apply at 3 jobs.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So that meant you were doing resumes. You had to apply at 3 jobs every week, and then you had to punch it in where you applied, all
Yep.
this stuff.
Right.
And I mean, it wasn't a lot of work, but it was more tedious work than
Mm-hmm.
I would have preferred. So I was just like, this kind of sucks.
Right.
Like that I have to go in, do these interviews,
Mm-hmm.
all this stuff. So I was like pushing June of 2012. And so I was like, okay, I'm gonna legitimately get a job. Like I'd much rather just work than do this like fill
Mm-hmm.
this
Mm-hmm.
out.
Right.
I hate paperwork.
Yeah.
That's the thing I hate the most. So good thing I didn't become an architect.
Yeah.
Uh, but um, so I applied at all the boat companies down in Port Allen
Mm.
because I was like, oh, it's summer. They've got to be hiring.
Right. For sure.
That's a
Yeah.
summer job.
Mm-hmm.
And got when I went in with that mentality, like, oh, I'm just gonna get a summer job, and then I'm gonna figure out what I want to do.
Mm-hmm.
Whether that's go to school,
Right.
whether that's find a different profession, a different job.
Mm-hmm.
Because the golf course that I was working at, I was getting paid $17 an hour
Okay.
back then, and that
Yeah.
was the most I was making ever. And I was like,
I mean, that's
wow, that
pretty good at that.
in
I don't know what year that was, but that's pretty good.
2012,
Yeah, that's pretty good. 2012. Yeah.
I was 20, and I was like, this is the dream.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I got a set. I got I get paid like 2,500,
Mm-hmm.
whatever
Mm-hmm.
it was. Like
Mm-hmm.
I was psyched,
Mm-hmm.
and I was thinking like that was the dream. Like I'm
Yeah.
good.
Yeah. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Um, and so I get on the boats that first year, and it's kind of funny because like when I first got on the boat, they I did a ride along on both the raft
Okay.
and their catamaran.
Okay. Yep.
The catamaran's the one that you did a ride along on.
Right.
So when I did the raft, I was like, oh, this is easy, whatever. Like I'm
Mm-hmm.
fine.
Mm-hmm.
But when I did the cat, I felt super queasy.
Oh, was it bad?
But I played it off,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
but I like even one of the crew. He's like, you were feeling it, weren't you? And I was like, I definitely was.
Dude, there's no
But
joke. The ocean's no joke,
yeah,
especially on that
which is
day.
why
Yeah.
I always find it funny when people think that they can move from somewhere that has a bunch of lakes and they're like, oh, I'm going to get a job on the Nepali boats. I'm a captain.
It's like, all
I'm
right,
like,
well, it's
you
different.
have no idea what you're getting yourself into.
It's different.
Um, so I got super queasy,
Mm-hmm.
but I was like, you know what? This is a summer job. I just have to make it through the day. I was told I'm going to be on the rafts anyways, and I did fine on the rafts.
Yeah. Yeah.
So go moving forward, got on the rafts and was like, okay, summer ended, and I was like, I don't know what I want to do yet. So I guess
Mm.
I'll just continue working. They work year round.
Yeah.
All right, I'll continue working. And for some odd reason, not an odd reason for the guy to take vacation, but um, the odd reason was the main guy on their catamaran, the lucky lady,
Mm-hmm.
took a vacation for
Okay.
like a week,
Mm-hmm.
but I was the guy that covered his shift.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
So, like, up until this point, like the last time I was on that boat, I felt super queasy.
Yeah. Right.
So I was like, oh crap, this is maybe
Maybe it'll
I've
be
kicked it.
okay. Yeah. Yeah.
It's like
Yeah.
I've been working on boats now for like 3 months. I'm good.
Yep.
And so I get on the boat and I'm like, okay, I'm just doing the job. I'm like, you
Mm-hmm.
guys got to tell me what to do. So just working, and
Mm-hmm.
felt fine, and then like midway through the trip, I started feeling a little queasy, and I was like, "Oof, okay, this is just got to push through it. Whatever."
Yeah.
Get done. The next day, I'm working. I get on the boat, and I remember feeling a little queasy, and then I got off the boat, and the dock was spinning,
Oh, okay.
and I was like,
You're
"Oh
like, oh, this is not good.
crap,
Yeah.
this is not
Okay.
fun."
Yeah.
And then third day, get on the boat, start not feeling queasy,
Hmm.
get off the boat, dock's not spinning. I'm like, oh,
Okay.
did I like work through it?
Yeah.
Whatever. Go home. Midnight comes around. I wake up and my room's spinning. And I'm
Why
like,
have I not heard of this? Okay, keep going.
and I'm like, what the heck? Like, this is gnarly. I got like
Uh-huh.
3 more days to go.
Yeah.
My mom being a pharmacist,
Hmm.
I like call her. I'm like, I need something for
Hmm.
nausea.
Hmm. Hmm.
Like, I don't want Dramamine or Bonine or
Hmm.
whatever it is. Like, I want something good.
Hmm.
Like, I got to work on this boat and I got to pretend like I'm good dealing with other people's puke
Right.
while I'm like trying to hold myself's puke in.
Hmm.
And so she ends up giving me this stuff that it was funny because she was like, I don't even know if it's still good.
Okay. Like
It
expired? Well,
was,
like what are you?
well, it was her nausea medicine from when she was pregnant with me.
Yes. That's funny. Okay. Yep.
So she was like, I don't know if it'll still work. And
Sure,
I don't
sure.
know if it was a placebo or what, but I took the dose, whatever, went to work and was fine. And then I had a bunch in that vial. So I was like, anytime I went to work on their catamaran, I would take one
Hmm.
just to kind of. And then as the vial got smaller and smaller, I started like, I'm going to take one every 2 trips.
Okay.
I'm going to take one every 3 trips.
Hmm.
And then eventually I just stopped taking it and not,
Now you're fine.
yeah, I don't,
Okay, yeah.
well, in certain scenarios, I will get queasy on a boat like
Hmm.
that.
Hmm.
So it happened many years later. I was working on that boat and like when you're motion sickness, the worst thing you can do is go into an enclosed area,
Hmm.
look at something really small inside of the boat,
Hmm. Hmm.
and like change your demeanor, like from sitting to standing or like
Okay, yeah, yeah, I see what you're saying.
laying to standing up. So I went into the galley,
Yep.
enclosed area.
Yep.
I was helping set up food, so I was looking into a warmer,
Okay.
and I was hunched over,
Yep.
and I picked it up and I stood up really quick. So all three. And the moment I did that, I was like, "Ooh." Not to mention it was like 10-foot seas.
Okay, yeah.
And I'm like, I put it down and I'm like, I gotta go outside. And my friend at the time was just
Yeah.
laughing at me.
Yeah.
I was like, I gotta go outside. Like,
Yeah.
if I don't right now, I like smelling all this food is not gonna help me.
Hmm. Hmm.
So he was just laughing. But so certain scenarios, I mean, I feel like anyone would can or would get seasick in certain scenarios.
Hmm. Hmm. Which makes sense, yeah.
Um, but yeah, when I initially started as a on the boats, it was literally just I'm gonna do this for a summer,
Yeah.
maybe a winter, and then I'm gonna either go to school, get another job. Because
Hmm.
when I started on the boats, I was making $10 an hour,
Oh, wow. Yeah.
so I went from 17 to 10.
Yeah, that's a freaking huge cut.
Huge decrease,
Literally almost half.
but there was tips,
Yeah, okay, well, yeah.
but it really didn't.
Didn't average out.
Yeah, to
Hmm.
17.
Hmm. Hmm. So maybe you were
So
making like a consistent 13 or 14.
yeah,
Yeah,
that would be a better ad. But like going from that 17 where it's like I saw it in my paycheck and
right. Super consistent.
yeah, so
Hmm.
that was kind of, and like tips is
Yep.
it's just like the ocean, it's waves. So like you
Right.
can have days where you make a really good amount of tips and
Hmm.
days where it's just trash.
Right. Yep.
But um, So that was kind of like my whole boating scenario, and just,
Kind of how you got started.
yeah, and eventually just kind of worked my way up as crew. It was while I was still crew, I wasn't even a captain yet when I moved to Oahu.
Mm-hmm.
But when I moved back, it was it was a really crazy transition. So like when I moved from Kauai, I'm I like gave myself like 2 weeks after I quit Kauai Sea Tours
Mm-hmm.
to get ready, and I moved. But when I found out I was moving back to Kauai,
Mm-hmm.
I called Kauai Sea Tours up,
Mm-hmm.
and I was like, "I'm coming back. Do you guys have a job for me?" They're like,
Mm-hmm.
"Yeah." So the day after I got back, I took a drug test. The day after that, I was back on the boat.
Oh, nice. Nice. Okay.
So there
Yeah.
was no like transition period, really. Just that 6 months of me being gone,
Right.
and then did it again for another 2.5, 2 years. It was funny. I was thinking about this a while ago. Prior to where I'm at now,
Mm-hmm.
I had never been at a job consistently for over 2 years.
Wow. Isn't that funny?
Subway,
Yep.
the golf course,
Mm-hmm.
all the times at Kauai Sea Tours,
Mm-hmm.
because I got I quit Kauai Sea Tours 3 times.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Right.
Um,
Right.
but yeah, every time it was never consecutively at a job for more than 2 years.
Mm, yeah.
It's really weird to say that, but
But this is the first time, I guess,
yeah,
and the first and only time, I guess.
I'm at year 4.
Yeah. That's crazy. Okay. Okay. So figuring out that architecture wasn't the thing, and then kind of going through this, honestly, a roller coaster, and it sounded like a lot of growing pains that you were going through. What were some of the challenges growing up on Kauai for you specifically? Was there anything challenging growing up on the islands that maybe not everybody would attest to?
So I mean, first and foremost, like just kind of being white
Yeah.
in an
Hmm.
area that is predominantly not white,
Right.
and there's a lot of disdain and animosity towards the white people because
Hmm.
of the illegal overthrow. The so it was more or less when I was younger
Yeah.
that I dealt with it,
Yeah.
and then where we grew up, Waimea
Hmm.
Valley, it's like all local
Yeah,
families.
the most like one of the most local spots you could probably find yourself in.
Yeah, so it's kind of one of those same things. Like growing up, I remember like comments being made, "Oh, how
Hmm.
they," and all
Hmm.
this. Like,
Hmm.
but like, yeah, dealing with that racism was hard at the time, I guess. But like,
Hmm.
I never really thought too much of it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yep.
And then, like, as we got older, I kind of like deciphered in my own head, like, oh, people would just make fun of people, like
Hmm.
here.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
It's not so much like I wouldn't do that in the mainland because like
Yeah, it's
there's a lot more animosity towards like different cultures, and there's
hmm.
more cultural differences in the continental states.
Yep, I agree with that.
But
Hmm.
here it's like we're such a melting pot
Hmm.
that we make fun of everybody,
Right. That's true. Yeah.
and then everybody makes fun of us.
Hmm. Hmm.
But that's kind of how it was growing up. Like when you're younger, you don't understand that.
Right.
So you feel like you're just being bullied or picked on
Right.
and dealing with that racism.
Hmm.
Uh, but then as you get older, like in my opinion, like I stopped caring about what people were saying
Hmm.
and kind of would laugh it off, and then
Yeah, yeah.
like would say something back to them,
Right.
and then they would laugh, and I was
Hmm.
like, oh, that's just life. That's how
It's
we
like
do it
yeah, yeah,
here.
yeah, it's like mutual. Yeah. Hmm.
Yeah, so it's like I never I definitely dealt with that growing up more like I remember it in elementary school more than middle school and high school.
Yeah.
And then now I look back at it and even um, everybody that I grew up with,
Mm-hmm.
not just you guys, but like majority of my friends are Hawaiians.
Mm-hmm.
Majority of my friends are local people.
Yep.
And it's like, oh wait. Now I'm like, okay, hold on. Like I remember even the first time Liz
Mm-hmm.
like came here, we would go to the store and people were like, oh Jake,
Right, right,
like, is
right,
this
right.
gonna happen all the time? Like, yeah,
Yep.
it is.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but yeah, as far as like challenges from Kauai's perspective, we're just not that like educationally like predominant
Mm-hmm.
here in Hawaii,
Mm-hmm.
or at least on Kauai.
Mm-hmm.
Like our elementary schools, our public systems, uh, they're good, but they're behind the rest of the continental
Right.
states.
Maybe it's not up to standard with the US or well, the rest
Yeah.
of the US, I guess.
So like
Mm-hmm.
I think like and I've heard it talking with like Jacob and I'm sure you felt it more. Like when you go to a university away from Kauai,
Mm-hmm.
there's another learning curve that you got to deal with of like the note taking and all that.
Mm-hmm.
Like whereas Kauai is pretty relaxed and
Yeah.
like where so I never dealt with that because I never left
Mm-hmm.
for school,
Yeah.
but I definitely do notice it in the sense of like, oh wow, our educational system here in Hawaii, unless you're going to a private school, generally is a little bit behind the rest of
Mm.
the or the upper 48.
I guess the islands seem almost to be slightly behind in, I guess it's educational points in the system. And then obviously you dealing with, I guess racism or, I mean, I guess that's what people would call it is racism for the
Yeah.
most part. Right. And I
Yep.
mean, it's fun. It's funny because like when I came here, you couldn't make that kind of jokes without getting some sort of like serious lashback, I guess. But when I'm on the islands, it's funny because like even when I go back to the island, my old nature comes back out, and it's like, oh, I can joke around with these people because I know for the most part, unless it's like really offensive, but I know if I can joke around with you or joke around with somebody else, it's not going to be like taken personally. If I didn't know you, then obviously that's a different story.
Yeah.
I really do like the island that we're from or the place that we're from just because it's such a community driven island or a community driven
Hmm.
place. You can't find, honestly, it's hard to find. And so with that being said, we'll just kind of go straight into it. You kind of grew up without your dad
Hmm.
for the most part. Tell us a little bit about, I guess, that and kind of how it affected you.
So I was 11 years old when it happened. It was
Mm,
May 8th, 2003.
hmm.
And it was my dad was surfing. He had a heart attack while surfing, and um, ultimately the heart attack ended his life. But
Hmm.
he also drowned, quote unquote.
Hmm.
Um, but as a kid, like being that as young as I was, my parents were already divorced.
Hmm.
I don't know. I kind of Liz and I were talking about this the other day. It's I don't think I fully processed it too
Yeah.
much.
Yeah, yeah. Because you're too young.
Um, yeah, I was 11, and you don't really process death in a way that you would as an adult.
Hmm. Right.
So, I mean, of course, sadness, of
Hmm.
course,
Hmm. Hmm.
like heartbreak and all that.
Yeah.
And I can express those now as an
Hmm.
adult, but as
Right.
a kid, it's like you don't know those emotions.
Right.
And it was kind of weird because, like, I had my dad, but I also had Bob,
Right. Right.
and they were both very much father figures to me.
Mm.
So, like, when my dad passed, Bob was actually surfing with him that day.
Oh wow. Okay. Yeah. Yep.
So, Bob and him were like best friends.
Mm-hmm.
And so when my dad passed, Bob really took it upon himself to be a father figure even more.
Mm.
Um,
Yeah.
so yes, it was sad, heartbreaking, but other than that, like I don't really remember it too much because I was just so young.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
And then I've grown up with it for so long without him being here that
Mm-hmm.
it's kind of weird in that sense.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I hear stories about him and I'm like, man, I wish I would have known him more.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah.
Like,
Mm-hmm.
um, my sister was just on island, um, and she brought her mom, who we have different moms.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but the last time her mom was here was like 40 some years ago.
Oh, well, okay.
And so we ended up meeting up with Marco.
Okay. Yeah. Anyway,
Um,
long story.
and
We'll skip past that. Yep. Continue.
um, we ended up meeting up with Marco,
Mm-hmm.
and they're talking all these stories about my dad.
Okay. Yeah.
And I'm sitting there and I'm like, wow, this is cool. But
Mm-hmm.
I don't know them. I don't know my dad as much as these guys do.
Right.
I've definitely had more days of it affecting me as an adult
Mm-hmm.
uh, than it has as a kid.
Yeah. That makes sense. Yeah.
And I think that was partially because of the fact that even though he was gone, I had his best friend Bob really taking over
Mm.
and really investing into my life. Like Bob wasn't a religious person in any way,
Mm-hmm.
but
But
he
he was
never had
there.
kids.
He
Yeah,
was
he never
there.
had kids of his own,
Mm-hmm.
and he was there for anything. I remember when I was at KCC,
Mm-hmm.
when I was at community college, I was driving to work one day, or driving to school one day, and I got a flat tire. It was a day of a test,
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
and it's like 6 in the morning, maybe even
Sure.
earlier.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I called Bob, and I was like, I just got a flat tire. I need to get to school. There's a big exam today.
Mm-hmm.
And he came, picked me up, dropped me off at school,
Mm-hmm.
and like did stuff around the Hui and picked me up and brought me back.
Yeah.
It's like I look back at that now and I'm like, I mean, I'm sure he had other plans and he completely changed his plans around to help me
Mm-hmm.
out.
Yeah. Like who does that? You know?
Yeah,
Yeah.
aside
That's
from
cool.
family.
Yeah. 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 Mm-hmm.
Um, so uh, I think what was quote unquote a little harder on me than losing my actual dad was when Bob passed away when I was 19
Mm.
because
Yeah.
I was older.
Right. Yeah.
So that I think was harder on me a
Mm-hmm.
little bit.
So how do you deal with that stuff? Like, do you still deal with that stuff now?
Not so much
Mm-hmm.
because I've dealt with death a lot as a kid growing up.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Um, I have learned to not in a sense like ignore it, but like what happened has happened. No matter how much I grieve,
Mm-hmm.
life's gonna keep going forward.
Mm-hmm.
And if I stay here and dwell on this, I'm never
Mm-hmm.
gonna move forward with life.
Right. Yeah, for sure.
So
Mm-hmm.
like I'm very focused on the now and the future as much, not as much as the past.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, that's good.
So that's kind of how I deal with it. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
everyone's different. Some people
Mm-hmm.
need to really process through their
Mm-hmm.
emotions and work through it.
Right.
Um, but for me, that was my big thing was I need to get up, go to work, do what I got to do. I got to move forward. Life goes on.
Yeah.
And yes, there are moments of grieving. Yes, there are moments of sadness where you got to cry it out and you're going to feel the heartbreak. You're going to feel
Mm-hmm.
the pain,
Mm-hmm.
but they're, they're fleeting.
Yeah.
They come and go.
Right.
And it's good to acknowledge them. It's good to feel them,
Mm-hmm.
but don't dwell on them
Yeah.
because they can be like an anchor
Mm-hmm.
that holds you in place if you just focus on them, in my opinion.
I guess I feel like as I'm older, it's harder to deal with those things, whether it's death or something bad happens, just a situation that is just not a good situation. It's just harder to deal with as an adult or as you grow older, just because you're able to process those things a little bit more versus to when you're a kid and you almost feel numb to it.
Mhm.
Um, or maybe numb is not the right word, but you just don't, like you said, it's harder to process. You don't necessarily know what emotions to have. You don't know how to feel. You don't know what's right, what's wrong. But no, yeah, I totally agree that maybe that even though your dad passed away when you were so young, it was awesome that Bob was still there to honestly kind of raise you a little bit, teach you things, show you things. You took that and you took him in as, I guess, your father figure. And I
Yeah.
think that's something that we should all do, in the sense of like, if you don't, um, if you haven't grown up with a father figure, I guess, let's say that. If you haven't grown up with a father figure, or if you don't have a father figure in your life and you're still young, I would suggest you get somebody that you can really count on, somebody that, you look up to, you hang out with them, you get to know them, and kind of have them not be your mentor, but like be your father figure. There are those, I guess you could say, those dads out there that that are willing to, just like Bob, willing to stick his neck out for you, and stick their neck out and kind of like make sacrifices to do good things for the younger, especially the younger men.
Hmm.
Um, and I think that's powerful. I think that's awesome because, like, when I was growing up, my dad was in and out. I love my dad. Nothing, not throwing shade or throwing anything against him. But we just had a rough childhood because he was kind of in and out. And I really needed to figure out, and I needed those people in my life that were kind of father figures. And those people were like my grandpa. I guess you could say a really good father figure for a little while was Pastor David for me. Um, and so on and so forth. And it was almost like I kind of started latching. I started finding these people in my life, like, oh, I really like them. I want to be like them. I want to be around them more often. And so I would do that. And as I got into college, did the same exact thing. Found, I guess you could say, mentors, but they eventually turned into just really good friends, as I got older, which is kind of cool to say because it's like you can't say that about a lot of mentors. It's like, oh, they're my
Hmm.
mentor. No, well, yeah, they're my mentor, but they're also a really good friend of mine. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, no, that's I think that's powerful, and I think that's a cool thing to share. And I'm glad. Thank you for sharing that because
Yeah. I mean,
it's it's
it's
not easy.
definitely for the development of young men
Hmm.
to have a consistent figure in their life.
Hmm.
And I don't even necessarily think it needs to be an adult.
Mm,
It definitely does help to be an adult because they've lived a little more, and they're like you don't want to find a figure that's maybe the same age that's going through the same thing
right,
because you're not really figuring stuff out.
right.
So in our church, we're going through discipleship right now,
Hmm.
and discipleship in the way that Pastor Aaron explained it is as long as you're one or two steps ahead, you can disciple someone.
Mm, hmm.
So like finding someone that has that a little more experience. If you're a freshman in high school, senior in high school, that
Yeah.
could be that mentorship,
Hmm. Hmm.
that father figure,
Hmm. Yeah.
um, or in a church, a youth pastor.
Yep.
So that's definitely important.
Yeah. 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 Okay, Jake. A few questions before we go. We'll make it a little quick. if you can tell the people that come to the island are not born on islands, that are not locals, people are afraid of like being made fun of, you know, getting racist comments, being called white, being called whatever. What would you tell them when they come to Kauai, and how, like, maybe on in the way of like how to gain respect from the people of the island?
Mm. So I know we kind of touched on it a little bit about like making fun of everyone.
Mm-hmm.
That is not what you do when you're coming to visit.
Don't
Do
do that,
not,
please.
don't come here and just be like, oh, they said that if I just make fun of someone, that is a way to
No.
like that's one thing when you're growing up in it
Mm-hmm.
and
Yep.
like you've developed these relationships.
Right.
I guess the best way to earn respect from the local people would be to show respect.
Yeah.
If I go to someone's house, I'm not gonna be like, I guess procedure is with their house.
Okay.
Like,
Yeah. Yep.
I mean,
Mm-hmm.
like growing up with you guys, like I knew I could just walk into your house,
Right. Right.
and vice
Mm-hmm.
versa. You guys
Mm-hmm.
knew you could just walk into my
Mm-hmm.
house.
Yep.
Like we had developed that relationship. We were essentially family in that
Mm-hmm.
sense.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not gonna just go and do that to some random person.
Right.
So like I'm gonna respect them, knock, ring a doorbell, ask questions.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, just showing respect, showing Hawaii, I think would be a little different in the fact of not just respect for the people, but for the land.
Mm.
You can really lose respect if you come and you're just like littering,
Yep.
um, not taking care of your area,
Mm-hmm.
whether it be your hotel room,
Mm-hmm.
Airbnb, the
Mm-hmm.
beach.
Yep.
Uh, I definitely show a lot of respect to people that will be walking around and they pick up trash.
Yeah.
Like, hey, wow, like that's awesome, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Like
Yeah.
even if I don't say anything to them, like I see it and it's like, oh, like, and it just generally there's more of a respect for them for doing
Mm-hmm. Right.
that.
Right.
And so that would be my best advice for anyone coming to visit Hawaii.
Mm-hmm.
Um, is to just be very aware
Yeah.
and respectful of the land. There's a lot of history on this land, uh, and especially for white people, there's a lot of negative history.
Mm-hmm.
So you already have that kind of working against you.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Racism may or may not occur.
Mm-hmm.
It's just, it might. Some people still have that disdain, and you just don't lash back out at it, I guess, in a sense. Like,
Mm-hmm.
just ignore it, walk away. Like, don't try and. Sometimes people are just trying to provoke you.
Yep.
And so just ignore it, walk away, do your thing. Uh, and yeah, just uh, show respect to the land, pick up trash if you see trash. Um, Definitely, like, just get out of the mentality of like, I'm paying all this money to come here.
Mm-hmm.
I deserve this.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Like that
Mm-hmm.
shouldn't be the mentality that you have. You should have the mentality of, wow, I'm blessed that I could afford to come here.
Right. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Uh, and this is a blessing, not
Mm-hmm.
a I deserve.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So it's just mentality of how you approach. And I feel like people here are so used to viewing both sides that they can see when someone's entitled
Mm-hmm.
and when someone's like, oh, asking questions and
Mm-hmm.
not just like typical like white questions, but
Like people that are actually genuine.
yeah,
Mm-hmm.
like there's a when they sense a genuineness, um, you definitely get respect here more.
Mm. Yeah. Good. Yeah. That's awesome.
And
Yeah.
then if you do become good friends with someone, then you can start making fun of them.
Right. Right. After you do all of that other stuff.
Yeah.
All right. Last question. If you could tell younger Jake one piece of advice, if you could talk to younger
Hmm.
Jake, one piece of advice that you would want to give him, what would you say to him?
Ooh, that's a tough one. Hmm. I guess the biggest one would be to steward my finances better. I was not good at stewarding my finances when I was younger.
Mm-hmm.
I've gotten better as I've gotten older, but like if I would have started saving when I was working at the golf course
Mm,
or when I first started on the boats or anything like that, I feel like I would have a lot better potential now of buying a house or maybe I already have had a house.
right. Right. Yeah.
So I guess that would be my biggest advice would be to steward my own finances better as a young kid.
Mm-hmm.
And you're never too early to start practicing.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
You get an allowance, put a little bit aside.
Yeah.
I mean, Liz and I have talked about it when our daughter's born, or and any future kids, we're not going to give an allowance because they're not working for money here.
Mm-hmm.
We don't want them to establish that, like, oh, if I do this, I get money.
Right.
We want them to just develop a good work ethic in general.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And then when they start working, then they work for their finances.
Mm.
Yeah, that would be my biggest advice, I guess, would be to
Yeah.
just steward my finances better.
Yeah. That's
Like
good.
we we're saving money now and we've been saving money for a while, but
Mm-hmm.
it's just kind of one of those like, man, looking back at it, I'm like,
I wish I did a better job.
yeah. I mean, like I was buying whatever money was not a priority to me in a
Mm-hmm.
sense. Like
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I had enough to do what I wanted, and when growing up, you don't really respect it as much because you're not worried about rent, you're not worried about meals and all that. You have your
Mm-hmm.
parents to rely on for that.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I was just like, I'm gonna buy whatever I want to
Yeah. It's good.
buy. Yeah, and I
Sweet.
think I had that habit all the way up until I was like mid 20s even,
Mm. Mm.
and then I was like, I need to start saving money. Kind of good timing on those, like saving money because like stuff would happen and I'd need to pay a big money
Mm-hmm.
out, and it's like, oh, I'm glad I had a savings account, but
Right. Right.
at
Right.
the same time, it's like, crap, all my savings is gone.
Well, Jake, thank you for doing this episode with me. Is there any? Just let everybody know one more time where you're working and stuff like that, so that maybe when they come to Kauai, they can come and visit you, or even you can share your company that you work with, and then you can also share your social media stuff if you want
So I'm very on and off social media.
to. Mm-hmm.
Um, so I mean, it's just my name, Jake Kuzen.
Mm-hmm.
But the company I do work for, and I'm not planning on leaving anytime soon, is Nepali Pirates. So pretty easy one to remember. And yeah, we're making our name pretty known as a smaller locally owned company.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so yeah, if people are interested in coming out on a boat tour with me, Nepali Pirates, and when you book, there's like note sections if you're booking online. You can just request certain captains.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Nepali Pirates, and I mean they could follow that on Instagram too. There's more of that on social media. So Nepali Pirates and Nepali Experience, they're two different companies, but they're basically sisters.
Mm, okay. And I'll put all of those things in the description. So if anybody wants to go and find that stuff, you can just go look down in the description below and then you can request Jake from there. So,
Yeah,
all right, Jake, thank you so much for doing this podcast.
of course. Love doing it. It was fun.
We'll do more of them.
Yeah, for sure.
We'll do
We
more
got a
fun
lot more
ones.
stories.
Yeah, yeah, we'll do more fun ones.
There were a couple inside jokes that people didn't catch on when we just started laughing.
No. No.
Yeah, we'll do one where we're both drinking a monster.
Yeah, I gotta get one. That sounds good actually.